So you're ready to learn the satin stitch. The satin stitch is great for filling in an area or a space within your project. It's a great fill to learn. It's very versatile. So let's dig in. So let's talk about the satin stitch. In order to use this stitch, we need to fill a designated area or shape. We are going to stitch back and forth across the shape or designated space until it's covered with thread or floss. We are going to be creating parallel stitches to keep our stitching style neat and tidy. So choose which direction you'd like your stitches to run in order to best fill your space or to look good with your project. Also keep in mind that thicker thread will help fill the space faster. So if you're using floss, consider separating all 6 strands and recombining all 6 strands just to give them a touch more volume. Then to get started, we're going to bring the needle up at the edge of the area to be filled. Place the needle just a little bit outside of the space you're going to fill, especially if it's marked with a visible line. That way you make sure that that line is covered. Next, you're going to bring the thread or floss across the fill area and bring your needle back down just a touch outside of the perimeter you're filling. Now, there are 2 ways you can do this. There's the traditional method, where you're going to bring the floss back to your starting edge every time you work. So wherever your needle comes up on the project, you're going to start your stitches on that same side every single time. Or you can choose my favorite method, which is the thread saving method. And you're going to begin a new stitch on the same side where you completed the previous stitch. Basically, the difference is with the traditional method, you're going to have just as much floss on the back of your project as the front. I personally like saving my floss. We like to make the most of our supplies, right? So instead, I'm going to come back up on the same side where I left off so that the majority of my thread is on the top of the project where it's going to be visible. Then you're going to continue creating parallel stitches across the area that you're going to fill until the entire space is covered in floss. A few tips as you go: create some stitching guides. It helps ensure that your stitches stay nice and parallel. It's hard to really keep your stitches nice and straight. So to prevent this drifting, try to give yourself a few guide stitches. Take one of your satin stitches and place it a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch away from your other stitches and then stitch back to your other stitches. This just helps you keep on track and make sure that your stitches are going to stay upright and they're not going to start drifting. And as you're working, you may find that you have a few little gaps between your satin stitches. It's okay to go back and add a few extra stitches in just to fill those gaps. We want to make sure that your stitching area is nice and full. You can also do this to even out the perimeter of your shape. If it's starting to come out uneven, maybe some of your stitches are longer, maybe some are shorter, you can add a couple extra stitches just to lengthen the previous stitches and even out the border of the space that you're filling. The satin stitch in particular is really floss heavy. You're going to go through a lot of floss working with this stitch. So make sure you stop stitching before your floss gets too short, because you want to make sure that you can tie off a knot and secure it on the back if you need to rethread your needle and get another length of thread. It's going to be tempting with this stitch to get a really long length of thread or floss. Trust me, try to keep to 18 inches or it's much trickier to work with. Another trick I've learned is to flush out your floss strands if they are unevenly distributed. This is particularly important when you're using a 6-strand floss because those 6 strands tend to have a mind of their own, so they don't always pull through the fabric at the same rate. So you can flush out your floss by just running your fingers along it until you get to the end of your strand, just to keep all of your individual strands nice and even as you stitch. Now let's check out this stitch in a panel so you can really see it in action. Don't forget that you don't have to always stitch holding your project the same way. Consider turning your hoop or your project to make the stitching direction easier for you. You want to make sure that you are comfortable and that the stitching direction is easy for you to manage and easy for you to keep consistent. Awesome, now you've learned the satin stitch. If you're looking for even more video tutorials, be sure to check out our embroidery playlist. And don't forget to like and subscribe for even more videos like this one. Until next time.